this is the way you do this, right? You just go, hey guys, love having you here. Press the subscribe and like button. Click that bell, because if you click the bell, then you'll get notified every time we produce video.
You have Bill. Sorry, Chris. You have to record this and then post it.
I was
like
exactly
it better than yours.
Phil, you got to do that again. Okay, everyone else go on mute so that we don't. You want to get Phil on camera. Ready? Go, ready? Phil. I loved it. I loved it. Hi, welcome to another episode of Consultants Saying Things. I'm Chris Lockhart. Joined today by Bill Bensing, Shashi Sharmali, and Phil Yanoff. The topic that we're trying to tackle today, what we're going to do with this video is actually talk about starting your own consulting practice. Now, lots and lots of stuff has been written and said about this. You can go on YouTube and find all kinds of stuff about starting your own consulting practice. But I find that a lot of those videos and a lot of those written pieces are often by people that do that sort of advice for a living, and not so frequently by people who are actually consultants and practitioners themselves and do that for a living. So we have four of us here that are actually practitioners, and we think this is going to be maybe some pragmatic, practical advice on how to start your own consulting practice. So I'm actually going to go to Bill Bensing, because Bill, you have started several companies. You've been involved in some startups that you're working on right now. And I kind of want you to can you elaborate a little bit on sort of this topic area?
Yeah, well, this one is it's a near and dear one, because some of the companies I'm selling that software now and making a move into a bit of the consulting business. And so I selfishly recommended this topic because I want to talk about it, because I'm going through this, I'm having issues, I'm looking for outside help through some of these thought leaders, and I'm putting it all together and saying, okay, what actually works and what doesn't work? You got to think like a business, whereas in the traditional consulting world, you're delivering a specific product or service. Sometimes you're not thinking through your strategic approach or P&L, and frankly, what value you're offering. How am I different, and what value am I offering? Because nowadays, everybody's a consultant. Contractors call themselves consultants. There's people from the big five. Everybody's a consultant. And you're moving towards a world where remote work and non-W-2 work is becoming very standard, but yet the word consultant is very common. So to me, I want to say combating sometimes some of those perceptions, but also trying to build a true business, not just a sort of lifestyle.
Yeah, and that's actually an interesting point, because on the one hand, it's one thing to do like freelance consulting, right, where you're a temporary employee or contracted with someone. On the other hand, running a business where you and maybe some other people, employees, do consulting, that's kind of a different thing, because it's not for everyone, right, to run a GL and be constantly thinking about invoicing and all of this sort of stuff for multiple projects and actually running the back end of the business. And I mean, Phil has seen lots of people sort of go through this. And I know that, Phil, in your events, for example, you talk to a lot of folks that are involved in either their own business or starting their own business. What should someone be or how should someone be thinking about this topic from your experience that you've seen?
I think that's a solid question, because I wonder that myself on their behalf, right? I mean, people say, well, I'm going to go out on my own. And the question is, why? Why do you want to do that? Why is this compelling? Because going out on your own is not necessarily easy. And certainly going out on your own without some idea of where you're headed with this can be really frustrating. So I think getting a good sense of why you're up to this and what's going on is probably good. I mean, I would come back to you on that. What if they just I had a bad boss, so now I've decided I'm going to go out work on my own? That just seems like a terrible idea.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's in personal freedom. I want the ability to sort of manage my own. We talked recently about burnout, right? And taking on what you can and what you can't. Maybe this is an effort to sort of control your work.
Imagine you're right, and that's the spot. I want to control that. The thing is, lots of folks go out and they think that the piece that they're doing in the business is, in fact, the business. but there's so much other stuff wrapped around it. How did it get sold to begin with, right? I mean, who's going to guarantee the work when it's done? Who knows that there's a queue of work ahead of you so that you're, not constantly trying to figure out, am I going to have something to eat next month? I mean, there's that whole thing of the business. And I don't mean to tell someone, don't do this. What I'm saying is, just because you're a really great technician does not mean that you will be a great manager nor a great entrepreneur. And you really have to decide where you want to be inside that spectrum.
Isn't it also true, though, that like a lot of people, they think, hey, listen, I can do this. I can do it on my own and start a company to do it. But then, we know some people who are sort of in this category here locally in Greenville, South Carolina, where you have done something, you've done it well, maybe you even did it independently. Now you start a company to do it. And it turns out you no longer have the cycles to do it because
you don't even get to do it anymore, right? I don't get to sit down and write code anymore because every day I'm worried about payroll. I'm worried about the dude that's calling in sick. I'm worried about whether we've got the next job to feed those 5 people behind me. I mean, just this morning, listen to someone say, hey, my secret was not to have 7 people working for me because that was such a big nut. I spent all my time trying to make sure that the nut was covered as opposed to getting to do the work I really enjoy doing.
Shashi, you've worked in very, very large companies, some of them the largest companies, right? Yeah. And I think it gives you a different perspective, and it may even cause some people to think like, this is so complex. I can't possibly do all of these functions myself. I can't be the sales partner. I can't be the delivery principal. I can't do all the back end and the training and manage the people and all this sort of stuff. What's your perspective from your years sort of in the big firms?
When you work for a large firm, it's a great place for you to, and a safe way for you to build skills, right? Build skills around the technical skills, as well as your ability to build relationship with the client. And you go through the value chain. You start off as a senior consultant, you're working in the project, and your only job is to just work on the project. When you become a manager or a director, then you start getting more and more supporting sales pursuits, supporting, or again, still largely delivering the project, but get more on the sales pursuit and thought leadership. Once you become a partner, your job is largely to sell stuff so that you can rally the rest of your pyramid and continue to feed it. So this is a great place for you to build those skills. And when you are experiencing those, I would like to tie this back to what Phil said. You need to find your own mojo. What do you enjoy doing? What are you capable of doing? Right? So you may not like sales stuff. What I like to do, one of the girls I used to work with, and a great consultant, she says, I don't like to sell stuff. I like to work on projects which have a definite start and an end date. So definitely I think it'll be difficult for her if she decides to go independent and wants to start her own consulting firm. But at the same time, she is awesome at delivering projects. So I feel being in a large firm is a good place to build all the skills required to run a consulting firm. B, find what you are good at and what you enjoy doing. And if you think that, selling that stuff and cashing on your relationship, being a trusted advisor, having some more freedom is something which you really want to do, one should definitely go out and explore that as an option.
Big firm, right? I understand. Like that's a great training ground where you can sort of learn these skills. And by the way, you're kind of, I don't want to say protected, but you're not worrying about your next paycheck in most cases. You really worrying about your billability and all that sort of stuff, but you're not there like my family's not going to eat unless I sell work, right? That sort of thing. But, Bill, on your own, that's got to be like the top of mind, right? I will not eat unless I sell this work and deliver it. I mean, why did you decide, I'm going to leave Boeing. I'm going to leave the protection, leave the comfort, leave the benefits, leave all that behind and go do my own thing with, by the way, 0% guaranteed success, right?
It goes back to we realized the value of consulting. And I'm always on the edge about the value of consulting. And so I had an initial experience in college. And I was in college doing my undergraduate and I was consulting, i.e. what I was happening, I was going out to small businesses, I did my finance and accounting class, then going out to small businesses the next day and helping them set up finance and accounting systems in the startup world, right? And so truly that's the life of the consultant. Everybody knows it. And I got a little bit of that in college, and I went to Boeing. And inside Boeing is where I applied. I was not IT in Boeing. I was on the business side. But I started because I had this coding hobby. I started building these small pieces of software and putting them out inside Boeing. And these small pieces of software for a $2.5 billion division, and they were saving hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of dollars a year. And so I looked at this and I said, okay, if I can do this here, and it wasn't really about pay. It was like, I found a problem, I can solve it. Why can't I do that for broader than Boeing? So when I left Boeing, it was my first jump in the experiment of, all right, I want to see if I can do this. But one thing I want to talk about, Chris, is you talked about that zero, so that risk and everything like that. This is where people get it wrong. I know I talk about once or twice. I try to live on less than $25,000 a year. Okay. So when we talk about the food and everything like that, when I left Boeing, I had enough money saved up that I could live for almost 24 months, make all my mortgage payments, make all my school loan payments, and live the standard of living. I mean, it was $25,000 this year, so not high standard of living, but I could still go out to a bar every once in a while with some friends. And so you were
just a point on that, Bill. I'm pretty sure that that's what I spend on beer in a given year, right?
You're a bad example of a minimalist.
I mean, no, but seriously,
that's terrible.
In terms of minimalism, that's a low number to survive on, right? That's poverty line level, right? And you did it. That's kind of interesting.
So people think about poverty line, you can realize a lot what you can live without. So look at your bills, look at everything. There's a lot you can live without. And I learned it when I did a master's degree in France. I didn't have much money, and I also didn't want to pull much money out. So I lived on shoestring budgets, but I wasn't poor. I wasn't in the streets. I was having a good time. You just figure out what the opportunity cost is. So my biggest thing is, as I talk to people and they're jumping in, is think about your finances. You're not going to make money possibly for expect 12 to 18 months. And when I do it, it's a long-term investment. I just don't go because I'm mad at my boss or I don't like the environment I'm in. If those are the reasons you're making the decision, don't go try to do your own thing, because that's a wrong deal.
That's one scenario. I would like to disagree with this point. I mean, it's a good expectation to have. Keep your expectations low. But right now I'm working very closely with a friend of mine, and he's transitioning into he works for a very, very large software product firm. Now he has gone independent. I have seen, and as we speak pretty much every week, his transition, where right now he's earning more than he was earning at that place, but still going independent. So there is a whole concept of, if you are able to build your relationship network, and you build yourself a runway of 1 year where you have those little contracts signed up and you are actually delivering the project, which doesn't consume your 100% of the time, probably 50-60% of the time. The rest 30-40% you spend on setting up the operations of your firm around whatever finances and other stuff, accounting and all those things. At the same time, building pipeline for the future. So there is a way for you to move from your current job to the new one without having such a big gap. Unless you are doing a product development on your own.
So Shashi,
consulting is different.
Someone who's doing that, whether it's this guy that Shasha, and I'm trying to think from what do those examples typically look like? So when someone decides they want to go out, so on their own, right? Do they mean that they just want to go out and be an individual contributor, or are they going to go out and create another small firm where they have they bring 3 or 4 of their friends working for them, or 20? What is the typical geometry of that deal?
It's a transition, Phil. They start off with being an independent consultant with a mindset that I'm going to make it into a 5-people company in 6 months. Then I'm going to make a 10. It's a mindset thing. It's not a contractor stuff where you go, you do a project and you look for your next gig and then you just deliver that project. This is about, not spending 100% of your time on just delivering project. You are delivering 60-70% of your time in delivering project, but other 30 you are building your pipeline and your network of people who would take on the future projects what you have.
I want to comment on a couple different things there. When I left Boeing, I was developing products, to your point, but also as you're going consulting, some of the people watching may not watching, the relationships are important, but not everybody may have the relationships that the individual you're talking about has. And right now I'm transitioning from the products into the consulting. So I'm going back into leveraging historical relationships that have needed the type of value that I can provide to their organization, build that organization out. But you make a good point about the strategy. If you're going out, are you an individual contributor? Are you trying to make a bigger per hour a bang? Or are you actually trying to build something where you have a bench and you're doing something? Those are two different things. And people need to be real with themselves about that, because a bigger dollar per hour doesn't actually mean a bigger income at the end of the year after all said and done. But if you're doing a long-term investment, building a bench and building up a true company and a true brand, that's a different take. And so I think that's a good message for folks to ask themselves, why are you doing this? It goes back to why you're doing this. And are you truly trying to do a long-term investment? Like the individual that you're talking about, it sounds like he's trying to turn into a long-term investment.
Is the timing of when you can or when you should go independent. Like, are you going independent prematurely because you are frustrated with your job and you want to go independent? Probably not the right time. Or strategically, you have a mindset that you're spending at least 1 or 2 years building those relationships with the right people, and lay down the contract and then jump and go independent. So the timing is also very right. It has to be right.
Yeah. So part of my question about this, Shashi and Bill as well, is, as you're doing this, right? So a one-person company is economically stable. I kind of understand what I'm getting into, and I know what that's going to look like, right? I mean, I've got to work so many hours a week. I have to leave a few hours for business development off to the side, et cetera. But if I wanted to be comfortable doing this, right, I'm probably not going to do that off of my own back. And that means I need to have a few people working for me. And I think, if I had 3 people working for me that were doing the kind of work that we're talking about, I probably wouldn't have to work much myself in order to make a living off of it, right? I could make an income off of it. If I get to 6, I'm doing really good. I would think I'm making I can do really well. But here's the thing. At that point, if I had 6 people working for me, I'm not doing the thing that I thought I loved at the beginning. I might be working with who I really enjoy working with, but I have gone from that point of being the technician or being the consultant. Maybe I get to dip in here and there, but most of the time I'm trying to figure out how to feed 6 other people should that contract come to an end.
No, you are right. But in that case, what you need to do is, moment you start feeling that means you are looking for somebody who is going to be in an operating role within your company, so that you can go back to leading the content development in conjunction with the other consultants you have.
Well, let me comment that real quick. That comes back to strategy. So the consulting company I'm starting out right now, we're doing platforms, pipelines, and refactoring. Part of the value proposition is the thought leadership we're bringing. So as I bring people on as a bench and build out and get projects, what I'm doing is it's a bit of a Drucker thing, an effective executive. 50% of my time is spent towards operations, and I set my model up to where operations are as autonomous as possible. 50% is actually spent why I'm going in and doing it, to build that thought leadership, to do the research, to go in and say, here's what works. And the reason why you want to bring on our company is because we can now insource, and it's a big insourcing model. We can upskill your company, and then we back out. And so it goes to the value proposition is really based around that strategy. So I think it really depends on the strategy and how you want to take it. And one thing I look at, and it's a piece of advice I got from a mentor of mine from one of my startups. He's on my board of advisors. He said, look at how much you're making an hour without working. So put a dollar value out there. Say it's 150. And as you're bringing a bench on, what proportion of that's getting to you 150, and how much do you actually have to work? How many hours a year do you have to work to achieve that as a revenue stream? Minus expense, not taking care of expenses at this point in time, to get you to doing that. Is it 5 people? Is it 6 people? But also having that clear strategy and strategic approach. Sometimes I think people start the consulting business, they got the project-based work, and they just turn into a small lifestyle business. They have no strategic roadmap or plan, thinking about how am I get to the next step. And then in 18 months, 24 months, they just become another person that has consulting. They're in some space in some strip mall, and they got a crappy website that they bought for $10,000 from somebody.
PwC has something called a talent exchange. So there is a big market of independent consultants out there. So they created a channel of tapping onto external talent. Like they have whatever employee base of how many thousand people they have, but they have created this talent exchange where people, independent consultant registered themselves, and for their expertise, PwC would bring them onto the projects and pay them whatever, I don't know how many dollars per hour or so.
That's interesting. An interesting plug for PricewaterhouseCooper. That's always interesting to have. But that brings up an interesting point, right? This raises the question about skills, right? Like, it's not enough, as we've been talking, right? It's not enough to simply be good at X, right? There are these other things that you have to be able to sell. You have to be able to work with other people and blah, 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 right? Et cetera. Manage your own delivery schedule and all of those things. You're not going to have a partner hovering over your head, banging on you, telling you to make the slides look like this. You have to be able to articulate all that and structure all that. So there's that piece. And so what I'm kind of wondering now is, okay, great. What skills does it actually take to go out and do this kind of activity of setting up a practice?
And you're exactly right on, right? I mean, I have to move beyond being just the guy who does the work, whatever that individual contributor or technician or engineer or developer, however you want to say that. I mean, I've got to go beyond that bit because I now have to figure out how am I going to bring on these other skills? How do I go find and sell a thing? I mean, this is a thing that I think a lot of folks don't realize is that you have to sell. It's just simply being good at what you do will only bring in so much work. You've only got so much contact with it. So you really do have to learn. First thing you need to do is you need to learn how to sell. And if you've discovered that either you can't or don't want to learn how to do that, you really ought not to be out on your own.
The skills required are number one skill is relationship. Relationship, that is the thing which will, when I typically try to shy away from using the word selling, because this again has a negative connotation that you are a car salesman. But the key here is the person who is a relationship-oriented guy is a people-oriented person. Again, to people-oriented person, both in terms of working with the clients in order to get more work, which essentially is selling. But at the same time, you need to sell your company to people who you want to join. So you are selling upstream and you are selling downstream. That's number one skill you need to have. Relationship is an extremely foundational building block you have.
Take the point. You're right there. I absolutely agree. You've got to have relationship. What I want you to talk about is, where do you take that to? Is that everything? And is that sufficient even? And here's what I mean by that. No. If I feel like I'm sitting here on the air with four cats who are, pretty rare air, very good at what they do, built good businesses, built inside of or outside of someone else's business. They've built real good business. They've built good relationships. But, if I am, and I don't know what these numbers look like today for you guys, but if I'm inside McKinsey, in my day it was Anderson or IBM or something like, but I'm inside McKinsey and I walk out, I do not get to take their rate sheet with me, right? Because no one trusts me like those guys, right? And nor should they.
But what I would say is, again, what I've started realizing is people more and more, focus about who is working with them. Yeah, some of the firms like McKinsey, they have a brand which comes with them, right? But more and more, I'm seeing the second tier firm and even big four. If you are able to establish that credibility, they look at who they are working for. Clients have started asking for, I want to work with XYZ person because I love working with him. So they will call out on people they want to work on. So that's where the relationship is. Most of the time from management consulting firm, the boutique firms are formed when partner leaves. And what it takes is the relationship with them. And based on one or two accounts, he's able to build a company which is like a 15, 20 people company very easily.
On that point, Shashi, and I want to ask Bill this thread about relationship, because I've always felt that there's some element of what you deliver and it has to be at the high quality, but all things being equal, it's really about how you make someone feel about the thing that you're doing, right? It's like an emotional kind of thing, right? I feel good working with this person. I want to work with this person again. So even if this person leaves company X and starts company Y, I'll trust, because I trust that person.
Yes.
And I don't care about the company. I think Phil's point about the rate card, there's some reality there, right? Because yes, you may trust me, but I now no longer have the resources of a global, management consulting firm at my disposal, right? And so as a result, things go that way. But that thing about rate card and relationship, and how do you deal with that, or how have you dealt with that, Bill?
Relationships between two people, the people you know and the people you want to have relationships with, right? And so the existing people that know how you can perform, you see if you can leverage those to help land any types of contracts if you can provide for those contracts. Things that I've been focused on lately is how do I build relationships with people that I don't know? And a lot of that comes down to some of the stuff we're doing right here, like content marketing and building your own brand and helping people understand and learn. Some of the best things that I've learned is it's interesting in the consulting field. I can give away my secrets, and I actually learned this from Taiyoshi Ono and a lot of things from Toyota. They've given away, people have researched how Toyota works so well, but nobody can replicate it because of the cultural aspects behind Toyota and how well they produce. So I follow a bit of that model where it's like, I'll give you secrets. They're not secrets. It's all, it's a knowledge workforce these days. So it's nothing that I know. It's things I've stitched together. But what I want to do is I want to help you figure out how to solve your problems. And then by me engaging with you over this, let's say a video, we may have never talked, but all of a sudden now you have a level of trust in me because either I've built an argument or I've provided you insights that you never would have had if you wouldn't engaged with the content I put out there. So when I look from a consulting realm, I like, and that's, I bought consulting services too. And that's how I bought consulting services in the past, is engaged in that type of information exchange. And I want to know that the person I'm bringing on before I bring on is sort of like a bit of a test drive. But I look at building those new relationships, but then also the relationships you have, leverage those for references as you go forward. You cannot solely depend upon your existing relationships to keep you in business. No, you never could. You have to grow it. That may help you for 6 months at most. After that, it's that pipeline, and how are you going to fill that pipeline coming in?
So we talked about on the skill front, right? It's, okay, so you have to be able to go, you have to have something that's saleable, right? You have to have the relationship. You have to be able to sell that thing, articulate a story and a value proposition of why they should buy from you, and be able to have that sort of ability to build rapport with the knowledge that, listen, depending on how you work this, you may not be the cat actually delivering this stuff in the future. You're going to be sitting at the CEO's desk in your office running a business. So all of that into account. What else? Like, is this like, is this a thing like, people really without families should be the ones thinking about this? Or like, what other skills or situations or aspects of someone's life come into play here? Anyone?
I go back to unique value proposition. Here's my opinion here. Josh, you may differ with this one. I see where your friend's coming from. They've got some pipeline, they got some history. As I look at consulting, I say, what services are missing out there that people need? And can I go fill those services with thought leadership and capability? As opposed to what are the traditional consulting services, and can I just go find another client that needs these services? So I take a bit of a different look on it. Mine's probably a bit more risky. I'm trying to fill products that don't exist, while other people are saying, here's a market I'm going to compete in. I do, was it Peter Thiel? Peter Thiel was his book, From Zero to Ones, Never Compete. So I have this thing where I don't want to compete with anybody. I want to be the market because people want to come to me because of my capabilities, or come to my company because of the capabilities. I don't have to compete with anybody else. And so that is a bit of my business philosophy as I go look at it, which may be different, Shashi, from how you guys are thinking about, how you're thinking about it.
No, I think what you're saying is, again, there are different archetypes of how you can do this. What you just articulated is one of the archetype of it. And then one which I'm saying is a different archetype. So I don't necessarily 100% disagree with you. But I want to go back to the skill thing, right? What I've seen work in my friend's favor is another way of building relationship. He's a very generous guy in general. So when he was not even thinking about doing this on his own, he was helping people in his day-to-day job. Any person he interacted with, he was very generous. He was helping them out in their professional career. Hey, I will do this for you. If somebody needs help, they call him, he helps them. So this is the time when he's trying to do that. When he himself is surprised when he reaches out to the people remember all those things, right? It's not that the project he did with him, it's not his subject matter expertise. That's awesome on one side for sure. But another is your personal aspect of it, being generous and helping them when you don't need help. And when you need help, then people will be waiting for you to help you out. So that is working in his favor, what I'm seeing right now. Not everybody does that. Everybody first thinks what's in it for me before helping anybody out. That's sort of a selfish side of it.
No, but this brings up a good point, right? And I want to talk. So we talked about skills. We talked about the things that are needed. What about this thing of, it takes a village, right? Like what other, well, Phil, I know you work with a lot of startups and things. What organizations exist? What are the kinds of things people should be looking for as they're bootstrapping this practice? Like, what local organizations should they be looking to get involved with, or maybe that can help them aside from their friends and colleagues?
Yeah. So the thing is, there are lots of good resources out there, depending on what it is you're trying to do. But from the models that we've talked about so far, I would think any of those would be well served by going to the local SBDC office. That's the Small Business Development Center. And their job, quite frankly, prepaid with your tax dollars, is they help review business plans and make sure that you've thought of the things you're supposed to think of. And, you might say, well, I want to go to the SBDC. I don't know if those guys are super technical. They may or may not be really technology oriented, but they know business plans and they've seen people doing similar things to you. And they will think of things and maybe even pair you with a mentor who is, focused on where you're focused. So I think the SBDC is always a good place to start.
Are there question, Phil? Are there services around? You rightly mentioned, right? If you want to start something like this, you cannot be a one-dimension person.
Yeah.
Let's say if you are a good technical expert, but at the same time you want to start on your own. So another way to source this, so to run an independent consulting firm, there are certain functions which are required. Of course, you need sales, marketing stuff. You need product development and delivering service offering. And then third is, engaging people and all those kind of things. Are there other support services available where if I am good at selling, but then somebody else can take care of my operations at a very minimal cost? So it's about, sort of outsourcing, if you want to call it as, or hiring some complementary skill set, because I don't like to do operational logistics stuff of calendars and accounting and all those stuff. So can I go to one-stop shop where they can take care of my back-end operation while I take care of two things, let's say sales as well as delivering content and product? Just curious.
Yeah. So, I think there are probably lots of point services out there of one sort or another where someone could backfill part of that. I mean, heck, in the early days, you could probably use some sort of virtual assistant to kind of backfill pieces of what you were doing. But in the end, you're dealing with people, and lots of them. I mean, whether it's customers or otherwise. And I think you kind of almost, in the end, have to own or really have good control over those assets because, you need them to be responsive.
Got it. We've talked about skills. We've talked about some resources that you can use. Bill talked about how he lives on ramen noodles and $1 a day to bootstrap this kind of effort. What are some pitfalls that people should be avoiding? And I think, Bill, you sort of teed this up a little bit earlier, right? Like, don't think you're going to make money immediately out of the gate. I know, Shashi, you pointed out sometimes, depending on the consulting, you might be able to do some transition or lateral shift. But what are some other pitfalls that people should be avoiding when they're thinking of starting their own practice?
So one thing which I absolutely know, what Phil was mentioning, two models, right? One is, are you becoming like, per hour type of person, 150 or 200, $300 per hour, versus you're trying to go into 5 or 10 people company? Because it's easy for people, and that is happening with my friend too, getting sucked into that particular project because you want to knock it out of the park. But guess what happens? You are 100% focused on that, and you are not thinking about growing or building your pipeline. So that's
right.
A major pitfall which will happen, and it has happened.
And I think part of that too, Chris, I mean, the first part is to think that, I do have to be the Lone Ranger on this thing. I do have to figure this all out on my own, and to not get other people involved in it one way or another. So again, there's people like the SBDC. You could have a mentor, someone who's done this before. But you need someone to talk to about this. And, at a minimum, you're going to need some sort of advisory board because you do not know what you do not know. And that's the stuff that will bite you.
Yeah.
So are those the unknown unknowns?
That is the unknown unknown. wasn't really trying to make that reference, but the fact is, I always say we can't see into our own shadow. And there's a lot of times, we want to present fully integrated anyway. We want to look like we've got everything together. And that means that sometimes we just forget what we don't know, and it just blindsides us.
Bill, what mistakes did you make that you're comfortable sharing with us?
Oh man, I share a lot of them. So I think sometimes the going solo thing, it's always fun to try if you think it, but you're always going to be more powerful if you partner with people. So try to find the ways to partner smartly. Don't think you can do everything. So you don't have to necessarily do all your books through QuickBooks, but knowing how to manage a P&L, knowing your accounting statements, and understanding things from your CPA is very critical. So you don't have to be an expert, but you definitely have to be able to ask the right questions. Also, selling. So here's the thing about sales and the infamous no. What's a book? There's an FBI agent who wrote a book about negotiating. He always talks about the 3 no's: the hard no, the soft no, and then like always maybe later. Here's my thing: is get to know as soon as possible. Everybody wants to get to a yes, so everybody will hang on to a maybe or this yes. Get to know as soon as possible so you can move on. The biggest thing about a no, and this is my biggest learning lesson: you learn way more from no than you ever do yes. You can get yes, yes, and yes, and you'll just know that what you're doing worked for that, but you'll never know why everything else didn't work. So when somebody tells you no, go back and just humbly ask, hey, understand it's no. Could you help me understand why? What was it? Was it ask those questions in a humble manner so you can get that information and grow from there. I don't see a lot of people doing that. If you're a cowboy, cowgirl, you won't do that, and then you won't learn, and you won't necessarily grow as well.
I kind of want to get final thoughts on this because I feel like this is like many of our topics. We could talk about this all day long, right?
I'm not done yet.
Okay, final thought, Shashi. What's your final thought then? Go.
No, one thing is trust. You need to establish trust with people. You need to trust people. If you can't trust people, you cannot grow. And one I've seen, like I was with one of the smaller firms in the past, about 30-40 people. The biggest challenge was it was a single owner mentality. And what happened is he could never build a team or trust a team which can help him scale or grow. And the person never grew. He eventually ended up shrinking. So you got to trust people and build your team. Consulting is a team sport, or entrepreneurship is a team sport. So you need to build a team. Think what you are good at. Remember our boost days around fit for growth. Do capability assessment. So it's like what you are good at. What are your capabilities? And if you're not good at something, you source it from someone else. Partner, as Bill mentioned. Trust them with that, and then eventually you will grow.
The thing is, there are good and trusted resources out there. It would be crazy not to avail yourself of them. Listen, if this is a thing you really want to do, the good news is there's nothing we've said that's going to stop you from doing it. Let's just help you make as few mistakes as possible. And for that, you just need hope and a path. How has someone else done this? Is that something you can draft off of? And again, there's great public resources out there to help you solve that.
Learn what you need to know on somebody else's dime first. It's low risk, learn, but also you're in an area where you can engage potential customers. Like I did inside of Boeing, I learned a lot of things by engaging customers and solving their problems inside of there. Once you do that, then get a specialization in that area you know. Specialize in somewhere where you can become a bit of a thought leader. You don't have to have 2 million clients. 100 really good clients is great. And then second, look at it as a long-term investment. This is not something you just want to go off and do. Yes, you may want to try it, but approach it as a long-term investment and learn what it means to manage it as a long-term investment instead of a short-term gain.
The decision to leave the comfort of, the mothership is always, it's a tough decision for a lot of people because it means giving up and taking major risk. And, the failure rate is often high and you learn things from failures and that's great. But if you have, a family depending on that paycheck and health benefits and things like that, it's a large step to make. And so, to the degree that you can make sure you have the right skills, that, you can avail yourself of all of the resources and that, you can, for example, be honest with yourself about what is practical and what is actually going to happen over the next few months as you launch your practice, I think is important. So thanks, guys. I appreciate the conversation. We had Shashi Shromali, Phil Yanoff, Bill Bensing. I'm Chris Lockhart. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Go to the website, consultantsayingthings.com. Like a video. Subscribe to the channel and like a video, something like that. Give us some comments also. We're always entertaining those. So thank you very much for watching. We will see you next time.
Hey guys, we love having you here with Consultants Saying Things, and we need your help. So subscribe and like, press the bell, let yourself know every time we got a brand new episode out, and you won't miss any of us.